Is it on, is it? Okay, so just carrying on, we're just talking about what banks take security over, and obviously the best thing they like is something in rural is land and buildings, land. And that's where I guess rural lending, which is what this comes under, is a lot easier than if you think about banks when they lend to other companies or businesses. A lot of them are just taking security over shares or over the projected cash flows. So really, rural banking is pretty simple, well, a lot simpler or not as complex as lending to the big corporates or to businesses. Some of these businesses where they haven't really got a lot of assets, and obviously the corporates and stuff like that, they'll take security over plant and machinery and things like that, and just off their cash flow as well. But the other securities that banks look at, and again it's not relevant to you guys, but they will secure over dairy company shares, the Fonterra shares. Also, I'll just talk a bit about that is guarantees. What they might do is take a guarantee. So guarantee is basically somebody else or a third party saying, I'll guarantee the loan. If it all turns to custard, I'll front up with the money. And if they haven't got the money, then the bank. So just on guarantees, it's very easy for a bank or somebody to say, hey, I'll give you a guarantee. But the bank's got to actually know, well, is this guy good for it? And what they need to do is take a security over they need to secure that guarantee. So if you were saying having a family member that was going to guarantee your loan, then the bank would say, yep, and it might be for 500,000 or whatever, then we need to secure against the property to the person that is giving the guarantee, or what we call a guarantor. I mean, this is just sort of, you don't need this for the project, but I just thought it's just something that you might not be aware of. That's quite good to know.
Is that also taking the guarantor's holdings and put it in escrow?
Put it in
escrow?
Escrow?
Yeah.
What's escrow? I don't.
You know what escrow is? Holding company. Actually holds the funds.
We don't have that here. They might take shares in the company or whatever you've set up,
right,
something like that. But all I just want to clarify here is that if your business and you're relying on a guarantee from a third party, like a family member, then for them, the bank to rely on that guarantee or to value it, they would need to take a mortgage over that guarantor's property. Okay? But what I'm really trying to point out is that banks aren't going to take a guarantee from your granny or something like that, and she's giving you, and the bank's going to take security over her only asset, which is a house or something like that. There's no way a bank would ever do that, because if it all did all turn to custard, then it's not going to look very good. The bank going out and selling granny up and she's homeless, etc. So what we called is this. Another way of talking about that is a supported guarantee. It's got to be supported by security. That is, that's not critical to that person's business if it had to be sold or whatever, or liquidated, sold to repay that obligation. So all I'm saying is banks do look at securities, but they need to link it to a physical security for it to have any value. Sometimes they might, or they can do, take a lien over a deposit, which is that cash held on deposit. So it's a set off. But I guess if you've got money on deposit and you're earning 4 or 5%, and then you're borrowing some money and you're paying 7 or 8%, well, it kind of makes more sense that you terminate that deposit or cash that deposit in and put it straight in there, because immediately you're going to save yourself that sort of money. But you might have that money tied up, or it's in a, and there's a penalty to get out early, or it might be that somebody that is giving you a guarantee says, oh, well, you can secure it against my term deposit. So the bank would then say, yeah, that's fine, and it would need to be with the same bank as what you're borrowing from. So yeah, they would take that. So that person couldn't touch that or get that money out, the person that's giving you the guarantee, without the bank's consent. And quite rightly, you might just need X amount of dollars initially to get started, and then you repay it back fairly quickly, so you can take that off. But the guarantees, I mean, my advice is, if you're ever in a situation where you're asked to give a guarantee, I would do it very, very reluctantly, because the banks can really, if it does turn to custard, they can really they can really take you to task on it, and also it stays there even after a couple of years that the loan's repaid, or you think that you've withdrawn the guarantee. So it's quite a very onerous thing. They would take and cover over insurance policies, and they're in what we call endowment ones. So they are where you'll get some benefit out of it after a certain amount of time. It's not like a term life policy. Do we know what a term life policy is? So you're just basically paying an insurance each year or each month premium, and after it covers you for a certain period of time, and at the end of that time, well, you don't get anything out of it. Whereas endowment policies, part of your premium is going into an investment.
Can you borrow against KiwiSaver?
No, well, I mean, the bank's got that for your first home buyers, but no, you wouldn't borrow it for a business or anything like that, or against it, no. But if you're buying, my understanding is if you're a first home buyer, then you can get X amount of that out to put towards your deposit.
But you can borrow against whole life insurance if you've had that policy for 15 years.
And it's got an X amount of dollars in it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's got a certain value. Yeah.
So
but again, it's not so common now.
To borrow against whole life.
Yeah. Okay, so we talked about the loan to security ratio. So that was what you're borrowing over what you've secured against, and obviously that was a real simple example. You're borrowing $5 million, your property's worth $10 million, then your security margin or ratio is 50%. What that's probably just doing it in a lot more detail is this here, this PC is prior charges. So you might, so what I'm really trying to say here is that you might be borrowing the $5 million, okay, but on that property you might have borrowed, might have a what we call a first mortgage. So that's a first, there might be this $5 million is actually secured by way of a second mortgage, and you might already have a first mortgage on there to another bank, and say that's a million, just for example. So what you've got to do is add that 5 million, or add that million to the 5 million. So suddenly your security margin becomes 60%. Okay, because that's a prior charge. Okay, it's just making that formula look a bit more complicated for you. As I said, horticulture generally is less or equal to 50%, whereas pastoral farming, what I call the agriculture, is around 60, or they do go up to 65%. Okay, so your debt servicing, that's a key one, and that's what you're going to have to show in your budget, or you'll have to make comment on, is what your total charges are as a percentage of your gross income. Okay, so that's interest cost. Here we go for time, quarter past 6, right? So that's interest, but it's also lease costs, or rental. I mean, you might be having to rent and lease are the same thing, the way I look at it. But you might just call it rent for the sake of it, because you might be having to rent a house for that business or something like that. So that's total charges over the gross income, and that gross income, that's GFI. Well, that's for farming. So yours is GVI, gross vineyard income. Sales less purchases. In a vineyard, you don't have a lot of purchases, as in what they're saying there is that's for stock trading or something like that. Then you're buying X lambs at to generate that income, you have to buy stock as well, because they're just growing them out and then selling them. So for farming, they look at your sales less your purchases, your stock purchases. But in vineyard, it would just be your total vineyard income. Okay. Yeah, debt servicing should be 25% of GFI. That is for farming. TFI or TFW, that's total farm working expenses. So what I'm saying here is that this is real generalisation. Have you got? Oh, you might not have it easy there, but so for a pastoral business, sorry, I'll just try and get a decent pen here. So for a dairy farm, pit fruit orchard, pit fruit in a vineyard, gross income, or GI, so gross farm income or vineyard, is, say, we'll just do it all the same. It's we'll just talk big numbers again, $1 million. Same for the pit fruit orchard, and same for the vineyard. So so the production costs, or what we call the working farm working or working expenses. This is just a generalisation. Normally for a dairy farm, it's probably around 55%. For a pit fruit business, it's probably around 80%. Now for a vineyard, I haven't looked at any vineyard books for a while, but your cost structure for a vineyard is probably around 50 to 60%, is it? Or it can actually be a bit lower, can't it?
Yeah, 50.
50? So we'll say 500,000. Okay. So when we're saying charges, you can see that that's 55%, that's 80%, and that's 50%.
GI's gross income.
Yeah, GI's gross income. And working expenses is, the cost, so that's excluding charges, interest, rent, and drawings and taxation,
50 to 55%.
Yeah, 50, okay. So it's pretty easy to work out that, a pit fruit can't have a debt servicing level of 30%, okay, because there's nothing left, okay? Whereas a dairy farm can probably go to 30%, and on that you could say that would go to 30% of your income. So there's 20% left over. So that's charges. So we'll say that's 300,000. So there's 200,000 left over. That's 20%. So that makes 100. There's 200,000 left over to pay tax, take a living out, and do any capital development or plant replacement, etc. So, all I'm saying is for different industries they have different ratio or different level of charges, and for pit fruit, again, because it's such a high cost structure, at 80%, they normally can only go to 10% charges, whereas in viticulture you'll probably find it somewhere between 20 and 30%.
I suppose the big thing you have to watch for in terms of tax is that tax is worked out on your gross income.
Yeah, on your gross income, less your costs, less your interest.
Yeah. Yeah, less your interest.
as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Again, it'll be interesting to know what. So, have you done your budget once you're up steady? Your status quo budget, have you sort of got to that level? And what are your charges going to be?
Mine's 35 per hectare.
35,000.
For initial cost, excuse me. No, I haven't done.
Oh, your actual your interest cost on the money that you're borrowing. What's that as a percentage of your income?
I haven't got that for you.
Yeah. No, that's right.
That 35 is your establishment
Yeah.
cost.
Right, so what we're talking here, I just want to cover off, this stuff here is all here, and some of it doesn't apply to you guys, you don't do a livestock reconciliation. But when the big thing that they're going to be looking at is your cash flow. I mean, does it stack up? So what they're going to want is your financial statements for the past 3 years. But that's hard if you're a startup business, so any other benchmarking data to support what your costs are and how you've based them would be helpful. And then obviously your budget for the coming years. So that's why we've done 5 years of budgets or cash flows, because obviously the first 2 to 3 years you're not going to have any income, but you're just going to have costs, and you can have fixed costs of rates and everything like that you're still going to pay. So that's where that cash flow is going to be really good in terms of working out what you need. We'll cover that off a bit more. And then obviously just showing those key ratios, like what's your income per hectare, what your charges are as a percentage of income, and so that monthly cash flow is important. Just to show what sort of seasonal requirements you're going to need. Yeah, a bit of talk about the property description. Just a paragraph. So I think I've covered that before, but just describing how big it is, where it is, how far away it is from main services, because that all affects value, and what the varieties are and what the buildings are. And that's also when you might mention, if you're looking at buying it, what the contingencies are. The property lacks a bore or doesn't have a bore, so that's a cost that you're going to have to pay for up front to get that property going. So that's just talking about that. Yeah, and I mean that sort of covers that. Yeah, is the what standard are your improvements? That covers that there. So security. Let's say banks, when it's a highly specialised business, then they might ask for an independent valuation, but a lot of the time the banks will actually do their own valuation, because they'll have a huge database. They keep track of all the property sales because they're funding a lot of them, or all banks, they might be funding X amount of them, so they get a real handle on what's selling and at what prices they are. So that loan security ratio, so you might put that in your application, that X amount, your block's worth X amount up and running, and the maximum facilities you're going to have, or say your block up and running is $1 million, and the X amount of facilities that you're going to require will be 300,000, so my security margin is 30%. I mean, they work that all out themselves, but you need to show that. So immediately they can say, "Oh, this looks like a pretty secure deal." Your business plan, which will cover, and your CV, but just talking a bit about yourself there. Ownership structure. They haven't covered that at all in their course anywhere. Ownership structures.
No, and it's probably one of the things I would have touched on.
Yeah.
As to the difference between limited company partnership.
Do you want me to cover that, or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so there's really three types of ownership that you'd be looking at. So you can be sole trader or partnership. You can be a trust, or you can be a company, and that's the abbreviation for company. Or your business can be a mix of those. So your sole trader is obviously Joe Blow, and he's liable for the debt. Or you can go into partnership with your partner, or not. Yeah, for want of a better word, a business partner, not your sleeping partner. Or actually, sleeping partner is a term used in business as well, one that doesn't have anything to do with it. It means that what I'm really trying to say, a personal partner. Yeah, that's the word. Okay. So you as a partnership, you're both jointly and severally liable for the debt. So if one of them's having a great time and spending all the money, then the other person's equally liable for that debt as much as the person that's spending it all. Okay, trust is it's quite common for a trust to actually own the land, and then the trust lends or leases the land to a partnership or to the sole trader or to a company. And a trust basically is that the land's held in trust. I mean, trusts were back in the Crusades when Camelot or somebody like that, I don't know, the knights of the time or whatever, went off to the Crusades. He entrusted his best friend or somebody like that to look after the family business and make sure that there was an income for his family when he was away and if he died. So that's when trusts were actually first created. So and there's benefits of having a trust from a asset protection point of view for or liability if you get sued. If it's owned in a trust, you can be a beneficiary, but you don't actually physically own the land. It's for the benefit of your children or whoever the beneficiaries are named in your trustee. Okay, so I think for the sole purposes of your exercise, you might either look at it as a sole trader, you could talk about you've set up a trust to own the land, because it helps you from a protection from a matrimonial point of view. If you or something, one of you in the partnership dies, then and that person, the one that's surviving, remarries, then the person that they remarry, their new partner, can actually claim those assets. But if it's in a trust, it protects them for your child or for your children, etc. But for your purposes of your exercise, I would possibly be looking at it as maybe either a straightforward sole trader or partnership, or a company. So a company, the third one is a company, and that is where you have limited liability. It's a limited liability company, so you're only liable. The trading operation is only liable for the or the you're not personally liable for any debts in that company. Having said that, what you'll find is banks will still want to get a personal guarantee from you anyway. So you kind of you can't really get away from it, because at the end of the day, the bank's lending to a person. So if you form a company, that's fine, but they'll say, well, we want a personal guarantee from Julian or from Dan or whatever as well, because we're actually wanting to lend to people. We lend to people. So what you might have is, and this actually is quite good to have in your assignment, is a bit of a Y diagram. So say you own 10 hectares and it's owned by the X trust. Okay, so that's the 10 hectares, and then your trading entity might be X Limited or X Vineyards Limited. So that might have all the debt, because that's doing all the development. Okay, and all you're showing there is that you lease off the trust for X amount, which would cover the debt that trust is borrowing to do that development or whatever. And basically, you'd need a guarantee from the trust in favour of the company as well as, and then you might have in that Y diagram your Mr. X. So you have that there, and that's providing a guarantee. Can you see that? A guarantee there, and it's providing a guarantee there. Sorry, this is a bit rushed.
It's probably going to be easier just to consider it as a sole.
Yeah, I mean, for simplicity, yeah, just use it as a sole trader, or just have one entity like a company, okay? Set up a company.
I have a question.
Yep.
Is trust the same as concern, like family concern?
No, well, I guess it's meaning what you mean by family concern. Family business, yeah, well,
Land.
eh?
Land.
Yeah, land. Well, the land might be family owned, but it might be owned in your father's name, or in your mum and dad's name, or in your name. But a trust, yeah, your family, yeah, it's not the same thing, basically. That's the short answer. Family concern and trust is not the same thing. But when you say a family concern, then you can say that that's a business, and it might, and the actual the land might be owned by the trust, or it might be owned by the partnership, mum and dad. Yeah. So what you find is in New Zealand, a lot of land now is owned in trust, or has been set up as trusts.
Also, for companies, can you use shares as guarantees? Down to 40% of shares?
Yeah, because if the company owns the land, then in effect, you're not taking shares over the company, you'd be just taking a security over that land. So you wouldn't actually have to take security over the shares, because you've already got a mortgage on that. So when the bank's got a mortgage over that land, you can't really do anything with it without the bank's consent, like on sell it or change ownership of it. So you have to get the bank's consent anyway. Yeah, is that right? Is there any other good questions? Yeah, and I guess at the end of the day, if you're thinking, when you think like a banker, it all goes on gut feeling. Is this deal? Does it feel right? Does this person? Does he come across genuine? And so you're actually having to make a lot of judgments pretty quick. And yeah, the good analogy there is, well, would you lend your own money to this person? And if you wouldn't, well, you shouldn't be doing it anyway. And yeah, it's all about what are the risks. Yeah, that's what it's saying there. Think of it as your money. This is from the bank's point of view. And that's the formal part of the thing. But what I just do want to cover off with you guys. What time do you have to go?
15 minutes.
Okay. It's just to help you in your layout. Is working out. I might just bear with me a moment. I might just see if I can get a decent black pen. Is there one there? One there? I'm just trying to make sure that these people go work from this. Is in year one, when you do your first cash flow, you're going to work out what your costs are, and you might be spending 100,000 there. And then in year two, you might be spending another 50. In year three, you might be spending another 20. I don't know. I'm just making this up. And then in year four, you're not making any income, and then in year five you get your first full crop, or you might make, say, $10,000, and then in year five you're fully up and running, and your bottom line surplus is I don't know, say 30,000. That's positive. Okay, what you've got to look at there, and what that cash flow is going to be able to do, although I haven't actually altered or included the GST, but I think we're just going to leave that out just to keep it nice and simple, is you're going to have that 100,000, and you're going to have to service that for a year without any income, and you're going to have all your rates, etc. Like that's your capex that you're doing. Okay, so your cash flow will work out what your bottom line is, what your it'll work out what your interest costs are for that. So you're only going to need 100,000 initially, and then the interest on that, and let's just say that's 10%, so that's 110,000. And then you borrow another 50,000 the next year, so that's going to be 160,000 plus the interest on that, which is another 16. So that's 176,000. Okay. And then the next year you need another 20, so you're going to go to 196 plus 10%. So it's 196,000 because you that plus that plus 10% interest on that's 19,600. So what's that? 215. Yeah, 215,000. So, and then you're getting $10,000 there, so you're still servicing the interest. So that'll be 200 and. What I'm trying to say is that what you're probably best to recommend or ask for from the bank is a big overdraft facility. But what the bank will probably do is, provided that you've can show where the money's spent, they're not just going to give you the maximum you're going to need is probably $250,000 facility. They're unlikely to give you that straight up. They'll step it out and say we'll give you 110,000 in the first year, and then perhaps we can look at putting that into a loan, and then the next year, and then we'll give you 100,000 facility initially, and then in the next year we'll still give you 100,000 facility, but we'll take 76,000 out of the overdraft and put that onto a loan. And then in the next year they'll say, oh well, you need to go up to 215,000. So whatever there, that they might say, well look, let's take another 80,000 off out of your